quote-unquote Arab nations that are going to join this coalition, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And who I want to know who is saying that these countries are joining us. I haven't heard a thing out of King Abdullah. I'm sorry, I've heard nothing from the Saudis. You're expecting us to seek help from Iran.
But Shep makes a rather bold statement.
Yeah, he does. Let's let Shep. This is wild now.
Recruit more, and this will hurt us more than it will help us. I know that's been part of the equation, and what is the thinking?
Well, the thinking, Shep, is that we have been crystal clear about the fact that the United States will be leading a broad international coalition.
Oh, I know, but what about that point, Josh?
Including Muslim-led countries.
What happened? What are we going to do if and when? Oh, now, you know my time's limited. What are we going to do if and when our airstrikes end up with civilian casualties that they put on the internet, increase their numbers, and then this gets to something that nobody can handle? I know that's part of the thinking. What has been decided?
Well, there are two things about that, Shep. The first is we are going to have Muslim-majority countries, Muslim-led countries, who are part of this coalition. This is not going to be the United States against ISIL. This will be the international community, including the Muslim world, against these extremists.
Like Saudi Arabia's going to have some boots over there. Or
the
Jordan.
Second thing, well, I will let the individual members of the coalition announce the commitments that they're prepared to make.
There will be no commitment from those two on this. I will bet every penny I will ever make at this network.
That's a substantial bet.
It is a big bet, and it's a good bet because it's not going to happen, and the whole world knows it. That's why I wonder if sometimes, like when the Bush administration was doing this, these questions were asked from this desk. And now that you are doing it, these are fair questions that deserve answers. We have a coalition of the Muslim world. I don't see it. No one from Saudi Arabia, no one from Jordan has its own problems. Turkey has its own problems. We are not getting help from any of those nations. And to suggest that these people, with great respect, from Syria who are not organized, and the Pentagon says it'll take a year to train, and the Iraqi army, which has already folded and given away the weapons, are going to come together and fight ISIL for us and with us, seems like, as the president once put it, something of a fantasy.
I think it's something of some caca, personally, is what I think. I'm not a veterinarian, but I know bull droppings when I step in it. And some of this stuff that this administration is feeding us is a great big old truckload of some of that bull stuff.
First off, anytime anybody in the administration uses the words moderate opposition to Assad in Syria, moderate Muslim forces, moderate Muslim rebels, what they're saying there, we got to get our Democrat definition book back out again. What moderate Muslim rebel actually stands for in English is the middleman who will be selling or giving away whatever weapons we provide them immediately to ISIS. And I'm not saying that because it's some kind of thing where I'm going, I think that might happen. No, it's what's already happened. They will either willingly give them over to ISIS, or ISIS will go and take them from them. So any of those quote-unquote moderate Muslim rebels that we decide to provide arms to, why don't we just cut out the middleman and go ahead and give them to ISIS?
Now look, when you're saying that we provide arms to, just today, bipartisan agreement in both the Senate and the House, passing a resolution that says our representatives agree on our behalf to arm and train Syrian opposition forces. Now, these are some of those same Syrian guys that John McCain went and shook hands with.
Oh, you mean the ones that were linked with Al-Qaeda?
And Muslim Brotherhood? Yes, those same guys.
Nice guys.
Our president, his policy is so I'm not George Bush that he's done come around and went out the other side and is walking around in his fantasy land thinking that we are going to defeat an enemy militarily without using our military. It's not even so much of a we're going to fight you with one hand behind our back as it is we're going to fight you with both hands behind our back, and we're not even going to look.
Or fight.
We're going to beat you without even fighting. We'll show you.
This must be out of the lead from behind.
Nuance
playbook.
over nukes, I think, is their new philosophy. This is what Rand Paul had to say about us and going at it with ISIS and jumping the gun here on things, which is exactly what the Senate and the House did today. They jumped the gun big time.
It's not that I'm against all intervention. I do see ISIS as a problem. ISIS is now a threat to us. But I see our previous policy as having made it worse. I supported the decision to go into Afghanistan after 9/11. There are valid reasons for war. They should be few and far between. They should be very importantly debated, not shuffled into a 2,000-page bill and shuffled under the rug. When we go to war, it's the most important vote that any senator will ever take. Many on the other side have been better on this issue. When there was a Republican in office, there were loud voices on the other side. I see an empty chamber. There will be no voices against war because this is a Democrat president's war. That is something, the hypocrisy of that should resound in this nearly empty chamber. Is that where are the voices on the other side who were so hard on George Bush, who actually, by the way, actually did come to Congress, and we voted on an authorization of force. Agree or disagree, we did the right thing. But now we're going to fight the war for 3 or 4 months, see how it's going, see how the election goes, and then we're going to come back and maybe we'll talk about the use of authorization of force. Maybe we'll have amendments.
Yeah, where is the voice of opposition here?
Well, he talks about that nearly empty chamber. It's a shame that people can't see the video through this broadcast.
Yeah.
But it's out there on YouTube, on Rand Paul's channel, his YouTube channel. You can see it. He is sitting in this humongous room
in the Senate
with one of those big U-shaped counters, that they all sit behind, that all the senators sit behind. There's about 7 or 8 senators
or aides, senators' aides
seated.
Yeah.
Okay, at a giant conference table that would seat 20 or 30 people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the committee that's supposed to be debating all this.
Right.
He's talking to a largely empty room.
And a lot of the voices that used to fill that room when there was a Republican wanting to go to war for what would be arguably a lot worse reasons than we've got for, sending troops back into Iraq right now. Look, I want to squash ISIS too, really bad. But I don't believe in half measures. I don't believe in going to fight a war without, using ground troops to do it. I don't believe in lying to the American people.
Well, like he said, hiding that resolution in a 2,000-page bill.
Yeah.
Okay, and
or saying these aren't combat troops. But if they happen to be in Iraq at a time when a member of a hostile force like ISIS should fire upon them, they are allowed to return fire. And if you really just want to be picky and say, yes, Iraq is considered a combat zone, all right, then maybe you could say that we're installing combat troops, but they're not combat. See, this is what I mean. This trying to lie to us at the risk of sounding vulgar. I mean, this is really, peeing on us and telling us that it's raining.
Well, see, this is taking place at the same time that the House Select Committee is doing their hearings on Benghazi.
Well, before we even get to that,
well,
though.
wait, but it ties to it because what they're talking about is embassy security.
Yeah.
And that's what our 3,000 troops are actually supposed to do, is to go into our embassy in Baghdad and Erbil and protect those embassies.
And also,
if they're not going to combat while they're there, how are they to protect? So if they're, by definition, if they are there to fight somebody who wants to try to take over the embassy, I say that's a combat troop.
And there's no need in telling us that, trying to disguise them is something that they aren't.
Or did we, maybe they're all clerk typists.
Well, Bob Corker, Senator Bob Corker, had a chance to have some question-answer time with our Secretary of State, John Kerry.
Mr. Nuance.
And I'm just going to start in about the middle here, but this should give you an idea of the type of... Well, this is what happens when you have a nuanced foreign policy.
The things that you have laid out and the things that were laid out yesterday sound. When you're discussing training 5,000, in y'all's own words, doctors and dentists and others, in Saudi Arabia over a year, I don't know whether they're being trained for offensive or defensive. I'd like to clarify that, activities. My understanding is that they will be given higher tech equipment after they prove themselves on the battlefield. Do you understand how unrealistic and how that effort on the ground where they are based, where ISIL is based, doesn't match the rhetoric that the administration has laid out, and therefore you're asking us to approve something that we know the way you've laid it out makes no sense. We have a strong sense that our Army, our military leaders have urged you to put special forces on the ground, but no, we're not going to do that. So this doesn't even seem serious. It seems like a political answer to the United States as they cry out about this uncivilized activity, but it doesn't seem real to me. And if you're willing to get in a classified setting and lay out all these details and tell us which of these countries are going to be flying their flag into Syria, they're going to be putting people on the ground, because we know the Free Syrian Army cannot take on ISIL. You know that. You talk about a multi-year process. We're talking decades if that's going to be our salvation. So I'll just close with this. I'm disappointed. I was disappointed in the briefing we had last week. I do want us to deal with this in an effective way. You've not laid it out in a way that meets that test. I hope when we come back and before you've put people in harm's way unnecessarily, you have a plan that achieves the end that you just laid out. But we know right now that's not where you are. And again, I hope you'll seek it. I hope you'll say that you're not going to do it without it. And I hope you'll lay out a plan that will convince us that you're serious about doing the things you said you're going to do to the American people and to us about ISIL, because you haven't done it now. And I hope you'll lay out a way to pay for it, because we know this is going to take many, many years, and it has to do with the safety of our citizens.
Mr. Chairman, can I hope, answer a little bit here? Senator, I must say to you, I really find it somewhat surprising for you to suggest that as the President of the United States talks to the nation and commits to take strikes in order to deal with ISIL, as we have come back from a week of very serious meetings with nations around the world, all of whom are committed to this, that you sit there and suggest that it's not serious. Now, with all due respect to you, Senator,
okay,
let me just tell you something, point blank. The moderate opposition in Syria has in fact been fighting ISIL for the last 2 years. And since last January, the Free Syrian Army has been engaged with ISIL in Idlib,